Hello everyone, I'm your host, and welcome to Touch from the Tomb. I'm your host, Ty himself, coming back to you live from the last time we're going to be in here at this location. This is a very, very serious episode that deals with topics such as suicide and other very, very grim topics. So this is the warning now. Before you dive into it, there may be some triggering questions and there may be some triggering words that are said. So please, if you don't feel very comfortable, you may take the time to step away before we delve into this episode. Today we have the honor of being on the last episode at this location with our summer co-host, Davy.
Yo.
My brother from another mother. It is an honor to have you on the tomb.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
So everyone, as I say pretty much on every episode, I want this to be a very long-standing podcast where people from all levels and all walks of life may be able to come here freely and truly be comfortable listening to a lot of the things that we discuss here. There will be a bit of humor, there will be a bit of sadness. Some of the episodes have been a bit of tearjerkers.
Yeah.
Specifically the last one, not gonna lie. I might have cried I might have cut the camera a few times, broke down into tears. But yeah. Most of the things that we're gonna be talking about is things that plague us in our daily lives and how we handle certain situations and how we go about life as we know it. A lot of these questions I want to be able to get a grasp that at least you ask yourself one of these questions. I am fully willing to send you all the script regarding the questions if you want to have a formal write-up for everything so you could ask yourself these questions in conversations that you have with yourselves, with your peers, with your family, with your colleagues, anyone. Because these are truly important questions that don't just predicate to our lives, but to everyone's lives. I appreciate your time. So for the sixth topic, we will be going over, drumroll please, dealing with death. And we're going into a few subtopics going into understanding death, coping with grief, talking about death in mental health, rituals and ceremonies, how children deal with death. Oh my god, this is gonna hurt.
Oh yeah, no, it's gonna be a tough one. It's gonna be a tough one.
End of life planning, dealing with unexpected loss, memorialization and legacies, way of supporting others through their experiences with death and your experiences with death, finding a meaning in loss, death in digital age, cultural differences in mourning, healing and moving forward, personal experiences and stories.
That's a lot.
That
is a lot.
Yeah, there's 25 questions. No, I think it's 30, am I correct?
30, yeah.
It's 30 questions of just straight sadness. I'm not gonna lie to you. This junk gonna kick me in the face.
We're gonna try to make it fun though.
No!
I mean, I'll try to keep it as lighthearted as I can. I'll try to talk about this in good spirits, and yeah, we'll see where it goes.
True.
Yeah.
Okay, so the way this episode will go through is we will be discussing a few of the summer co-host Davy's pieces that he has written. Caleb, could you elaborate on those pieces and give him a small summary of each piece?
All right. So the first piece that I wrote, I think canonically, is Death and I. And Death and I talks about mainly my experience with chemo and peritoneal dialysis, two forms of dialysis to help the kidney survive without really having a kidney. And I decided to focus on the topic of death because that's where you're at for however long you're on dialysis. People don't realize how close to death one can get to when on hemodialysis. And I thought it'd be really informative if I just talk about my own story through my own lens, because for so long I've had to write my story through the way, my mom sees things or how my family sees things. And I've kind of been coached over time to, mention those topics, but this is actually the first story where I kind of took my own story in my own hands. And honestly, it's not everything is about dialysis, right? And I think that's the main takeaway from that going forward. Although it heavily centers around dialysis, I wanted to be clear that that's not my whole life. And so yeah, Death and I is about dealing with death, not just in dialysis, but throughout my whole life, right? Because I've had run-ins with death on multiple occasions. And that leads me to my second one. Good Soldier is about the aftermath, after dialysis, what happens after, right? Where I'm no longer tied to, a machine. What does life look like for me? And I sort of, I had the analogy of a soldier coming home from war, coming home from battle, and how, like a soldier has to deal with PTSD, I have to deal with, the anxiety of potentially going back and keeping everything in check. And so yeah, that's what Good Soldier is. Good Soldier is a story about moving on from a condition that's pretty much dominated my entire life up to this point. So yeah, those are got Death and I about in the thick of it, and then Good Soldier is about the aftermath.
And do you want to talk about your other piece as well?
That one was Puppet Show for the Heartbroken, right? That one is.
I thought you were going to talk about Puppet and I. Not Puppet and I, my fault.
Puppet Show for the Heartbroken.
Yeah, Puppet
That's
Show.
what I was ready for. Yeah, so Puppet Show and the Heartbroken. That's kind of a smaller story. It's a story about my past relationship. And just how really traumatic, I think that's the only word to describe it, traumatic that was. And of course, dialysis played a role in that too, but it's not the focal point. But if this had sort of a canon, I feel like Puppet Show would come first, then Death and I, and then Good Soldier. And then all the stories that I write after. So I'm still writing nonfiction stories. Fiction might be my main thing, but every now and then I write nonfiction. So every other story after that will come after Good Soldier. So yeah, no, Puppet Show for the Heartbroken is basically a story of my one and only relationship so far, and just how toxic it was. For that one, I related it to a marionette and puppet, because that's really how it felt. I felt I was in control of things I did. I felt manipulated, used, abused, and so yeah, that's that story. So those are my three.
Okay, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no.
Caleb, I think we had a conversation the other day regarding like how you were going to combine all these stories on the one day.
Yeah, the main goal for these stories is to combine them into one cohesive memoir, right? And I think the memoir will hold the title Good Soldier, right? That's the working title. But yeah, it's basically, it'll be a compilation or culmination of all my stories. And there's going to be some poetry in there as well to, break up the prose. So yeah, it'll be. I hope it'll be a good one, right? But I don't know if I should write it after I complete, these three stories, right? Because I have a lot more to write. So I think the goal of a memoir is something in the far future, right? But every nonfiction story I write is another chapter in my memoir. I mean, all the memoir is just putting it together. So.
I can understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
maybe, I don't know.
No, maybe it's coming, boy.
Maybe.
No.
I don't know.
When you hit, when you blow up, I'm gonna be right there.
All
you
right.
accepting your little prize and shit?
Yeah.
I'm gonna be right there.
Hopefully, yeah.
I'm gonna be that jump Dumbledore clapping.
All right.
Hit him with that Snape shit. I'm so sorry.
No. I told you, lighthearted.
Okay, so the way this episode is gonna go is, as we said before, we're gonna be doing like questions based off of his experience. Because not sadly, but I'm accepting of it that I don't think I've truly like had any like experiences that have made me get to that point. Like, yes, I have been definitely in a depressive state. Yes, I've been broken down and very, very heavy-hearted to the point where I literally was having a hard time functioning. But I never got to that point where I like questioned myself and if I should take the big leap, try to enter the next life and try to make sure that I'm going into something different. So having other people be able to like explain their experiences makes this show, and not only the show, but like life a little bit easier because we have like people that are willing to talk about it. And as I said, one shot, one take.
All right.
Yeah. So as I normally say, all these questions are for you. It's not just for us to talk about here, it's for you all to have your conversations. If you would like to receive a printed copy of these like questions or any script write-ups, please DM me at tuck.elijah on Instagram, or just write in the comments, hey, I want that script.
You gonna post stories too?
Yes, I
You
will.
the story link? Yeah.
If you would enjoy that.
I would. I most certainly would. I mean, the more exposure this gets, the not better off I'll be, but the better I'll feel. You know,
Okay.
just knowing these stories are out there. But yeah.
Will do. Most definitely will. And if you enjoy this episode, please click the subscribe button and notification as well as the like button to receive any information regarding any other episodes or any like information. I think at some point, depending on like how far and how long we take these episodes and how long like we take with this show, we will be like working on the Patreon and switching to other platforms and stuff like that. But for right now, we're here with you all on this beautiful moment, on this beautiful day. So let's get into the questions. We will be breaking down the questions based off of each text that we've done. And the first text is an analysis of death and I. Caleb?
Yeah.
The first question is, how has the concept of death affected your mental health and outlook on life?
So I guess to answer that, I would say that I think about death every day, and you know, whether it dominates the mental conversation or it's just an afterthought in the back of my mind. But yeah, I think about death every day, and I think it causes me to appreciate things a lot more, right? Because we are all very, very, very mortal beings, and we don't have very long, right? Depending on the person, no one knows how long I'm gonna live. No one knows how long I'm gonna live. So, if anything, death has made me appreciate life a whole lot more. And yeah, no, it just helps me savor the little things, you know, like reading on the porch in absolute silence, or listening to a jazz track. That is, you know, it's a small moment, but it's a moment I appreciate, because one day I won't be able to have that anymore. So thinking about death as often as I do, it helps me appreciate the little moments in life.
Indeed. So one of the things that, like as I said before, I've never like thought of like the actual act of committing or even believing that I wanted to, but sometimes I like tend to ask myself like questions regarding things such as, what would happen if I wasn't here? What would it be like for others? Have I one of the things that like quite literally I think about on a daily basis is, did I influence or touch people in a way that they can remember me for the rest of their lives?
Yeah, yeah. If I may, I often think of that. My version is who's gonna be at my funeral, right? When I eventually leave this earth, how many people are gonna show up? And I also think about, did I do enough to influence people, right? And yeah, and it's just, and what's so fascinating about death is that we know so much, but we know very little, right? We know it's the end, right? But we don't know what comes after. We don't know if we have some sort of awareness or consciousness when we reach the infinite nothingness, or if we don't feel anything, it's just feeling nothing. And I think that alone is hard to wrap your head around if you have awareness when you die. But or just in the moment again. But yeah, no, it's a very tangible thing, but untangible thing. Like, I can talk about death, right? But the more I go into it, I think, the less I understand it, without having to go back to talking about life. If that makes any sense. I may have spoken like gibberish just now.
You didn't just speak gibberish. You really speaking that shit. You really speaking that shit right now. But I wanted to come back to the idea of like someone being at the funeral. One of the questions I asked like during the school year when I was like, really, really messed up was not who was going to be at my funeral, because like I have a somewhat of an idea of who would be at my funeral right now, but who would be my six? Do you know what that means?
I don't believe I'm familiar with that term, no.
So when you are buried, like when you're about to be buried, you have to be carried by six individuals. Six or more individuals technically, but it's the six who are normally really carrying your coffin. And I had to sit down, and it was like I predicated my life on like my connections and like how I want to like have conversations with people, where like I quite literally like try to like work with my words so that I'm not going against what I normally stand for, especially if it's blatantly off the fact that I'm tired or I'm just speaking stupid.
Yeah.
You're speaking stupid. But like I've predicated my life on understanding that I want to make as many connections as I can, good or bad. A connection is still a connection. Being able to have conversations on a daily basis is something I truly enjoy. And regardless of those conversations, who can I say like are my real friends?
Right.
Who are my real brothers? Who are my sisters? Who's my parents? Who's my family? Who is going to be there when the shit hits the fan? And the idea of the six for me is not really just these people are the six people who are going to carry my coffin. No, these six people are the same six people I'm going to always be around. Because not only do I like make connections all the time, but because of the things that I've gone through in my life, it's really easy for me to forget people.
Yeah.
That's why like I keep streaks on Snapchat, where I try to text you at least once a month. It's not because of snap, like I just want to keep talking to you every day. No, so I remember you.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've talked a lot about how death impacts the people around you. But what I also want to stress is that you spend time with yourself in this life. I think it's important. It's just as important as making social connection. It's just to know yourself and appreciate yourself, right? And I think that all goes into loving yourself, right? You can't really love yourself if you don't know yourself. Can't really know yourself. You don't really know yourself unless you spend time alone by yourself. And I think spending time alone, thinking about, well, not necessarily thinking about these things, but yeah, thinking about these things, just doing what you love by yourself. Because one day, that too is going to not be a thing. You won't have the ability to just sit in a place by yourself and do whatever, right? And I think what's important, this might not be the key to life, but I think it's one of the foundations of life, is finding a balance between spending time with friends, family, making that social connection, but also balancing that with spending time alone, and just being you in a space, right? And just not worrying about who's calling you, who's texting you, what event you gotta get to. Just be alone and be by yourself, right? And I think that's a really important balance to maintain.
Can I double down? Well, not double down, but like go back.
Sure.
So you definitely just hit a whole bunch of topics that we'll definitely go back to. But another thing that I was going to ask you is, because you just mentioned it, quite the coping mechanisms or like ways you live life and trying to understanding that like death was quite literally at your door. Not once, not twice, not three, not four, but more than 5 times.
Yeah. And the thing is, right, Death wasn't just at my door, he was in my house, right?
In your crib.
He was in the crib.
Uninvited.
Yeah.
Eating your porch.
Yeah, like, eating my food and everything. And I think what's so cool about Death and I think one of the things I'm really proud of is that I made Death a character, right? As a writer, I'm very used to fiction and writing fictional characters and developing fictional world, fictional characters. But I think Death and I is the first piece where I blend those two together, right? Obviously, death is a real thing, but I think what's cool about that essay is that I kind of personify death in a way where he's like the drunk Jimmy Cricket on my shoulder, spouting bullshit sometimes. But sometimes it's not bullshit. Sometimes he would tell me real things, right? And I did that for 2 reasons. One, to just help me be comfortable in a non-fictional space, right? But two, just to make it, just to have the audience, the reader, just recognize how much death had a presence in my life, right? And I don't think, and with a strong presence, there's obviously a voice, right? And so that's why death talks, death has his own dialogue, and he has his own monologues, and he has everything, right? And so when it comes to coping mechanisms, right, one of the things I did, or what I still do, is play video games, right? Video games have always been how we pass time, right? But I think what it provided for me was to just distance myself from the world, right? Just to not be here, right? One of the things that I've always wanted, right, while going through that waiting process for the kingdom, was just to not be here for a while, and then come back when I got that key. So just not necessarily not live, although there was something more. There was some of that not wanting to live, but more often than not, I just didn't want to be present, right? I didn't want to live my life. And video games help with that. And I think that's what Death as a character kind of provided, right? He was that fantastical element. He was that escape into a fictional world in the sense of the story, if that makes sense. I really liked writing the character Death because I have this story out there called Wheat, and it's basically that character. So I basically put that character from that story, with the way he was in that story, into this story, and I think that's what works for it, because Death was raw, he was uncut, he was unfiltered. He didn't care about how I felt or what was going on. He just quite literally talked his shit, right? Talked his shit and moved on.
It's like your shit, twin.
Yeah. So video games definitely were coping mechanism. Reading, right? Reading was another coping mechanism. For the same reason video games, it was escapism. So like over the course of those years, right, escapism was very important for me, right? Sometimes I would overdo it, sometimes I, want to be lost in this fictional world for so long that I forget that I'm still here, right? But reading and video games is what got me through. Also watching TV, but not as much as reading and video games. So yeah, those were my mechanisms. Also prayer, but I'll get into that later. Yeah.
Indeed. Could you describe what made you like start writing about your experiences and like how you like created a passion for this writing and the passion for writing allowed you to like write about your stories, like actually speak on your stories?
Yeah. So I think the main difference, right, between nonfiction and fiction for me is I can write fiction anytime, right? Anytime I come up with a new nifty idea, strong enough to where I wanted to build a world after it, I could. And that didn't require time or anything. Right? Well, of course it required time, but I didn't need time in the sense that I needed time. But nonfiction was different because whenever I decide to write a nonfiction story, one of the key things I need is distance, right? Distance from the real event, right? Distance from the trauma, distance from, whatever bad, horrible shit that I've gone through. And that's important because I feel like nonfiction for me is the story of my victories, right? You got defeats here and there, but yeah, the nonfiction for me is the story of my victories, right? And I feel like I needed to tell these stories, right? It's because they're a way of processing what I've gone through, catharsis, if you will. And yeah, it's just a way of any unresolved trauma that I may have from the event. That's what writing's for, to get it all on paper and to write, to try and write exactly what I'm feeling. So what inspired me to write nonfiction? Well, it was practically getting out of this. Because I had a whole new life, a brand new life to live, right? I wanted to reflect and just to write how far I've come. Because it's very easy to just get lost in the fact that, I have no purpose, right? So I feel like writing nonfiction is important because it's the story of my victories, but also, more importantly, it's a story on sort of what I'm still struggling with, what I still have questions about. And I think having this kitty, it provides more energy, right, for me, right? So it's just my way of processing and trying to grasp this new life that I have.
You brought up some very, very strong topics. But one of the things that I will discuss before we move into the next question is that Caleb, you are loved, you are wanted, and you will always have me in your corner.
Thank you.
I know that I have a hard time talking on the phone in general, let alone talking to people in general, because I'm an idiot. But I'll always be there.
Thank you.
Even if it is a situation where like, oh shit, I'm like backed up by the ass, I will pick up the phone and at least just be around you if you need me.
Yeah, no, thank you. I really appreciate that.
It'll never be an issue.
Yeah.
The next thing that I wanted to go into was quite literally like your experience in the psych ward, what you mentioned in your text.
Yeah.
Yeah, like your experience in the psych ward, during your adolescence, and how that like moments like shaped your development and like how you grew and going forward.
Right. Being in the psych ward at Children's Hospital, quite honestly, and obviously, it wasn't an easy thing to do, right? It was very very scary, right? Because I was almost like 11, 12 at the time, right? Barely a teenager, not even a teenager, right? And I think what made it so horrifying, right, is because when you're a child, right, you're very used to having people around you, right? You know, whether that be your friends, your family, aunts and uncles, whoever. You're very used to being around people. And, you know, I think I even argue that younger children thrive around being with people, right? So when that's taken away from you, especially because of the system thinks that you're a danger to yourself, other people, when that's taken away from you, I think a part of the innocence of childhood is lost, right? Because you're taking, whether it be temporary or permanently, you're stripping away the fundamentals of child development, being around people, right? Now, lucky for me, I was old enough, right, to where I had that solid social foundation. But even still, it was hard because I wasn't allowed to have visitors, right? I didn't have my iPod or any video games to play, right? I just had a bed, a bathroom, and a desk. And you were kind of locked in by yourself, maybe like, I want to say like,
3 hours a day.
yeah, 2 or 3 hours a day, right? They let you out, you know, to eat, socialize a little bit, but then most of the time you were back in your room. I don't remember too much about it, not enough to write, but I remember how it felt, right? And I think where I felt then was regret, because how I got there, right? As the story reads, is I told my parents I didn't really want to live anymore, right? That I couldn't take it, and that was because of a friend I had in dialysis named Marquez, right? And dialysis, if you didn't know already, dialysis is very lonely, right? So when you have someone that understands that, truly understands that, as in goes through it with you, right? You want to hold on to that, right? But sometimes you can't because people are all in their walks of life going for their desired kidney transplant, and it so happens that he got his before me, right? And I very much needed him. I needed him because I felt like he was the only one who really understood what dialysis was like. And the funny thing is, we didn't need to talk about it because it was right there, right? He was on the machine, I was on the machine, so very rarely in that time I was with him, we can literally just be kids, normal kids again. But when he left, I got there was this hole in me, right? The hole that was left by his presence and what he meant to me. And yeah, after I figured out he was gone and what had happened to him, I was happy for him, sure, but I was more concerned about myself. And honestly, I didn't think I could go through with it, right? So I landed in the psychological ward, mental unit of Children's Hospital, and I was isolated for a while. And I think that's when I really developed Death's personality and consciousness, right? One thing I regret doing is not shining more of a light on Death's presence during that moment. Because in the early in the story, I think I talk about spinning the scythe, and I think that's one of the most powerful analogies I have in that story, right? Is Death spinning his scythe to determine whether I lose my mind in this place and I go my whole life without a kidney, I lose my mind, and I die without one. Or I get out and I live a new life. And I really wish I could have hammered home that concept a bit more in that moment. Because I know that spinning the whole spinning the cycle, that's very fleshed out throughout the story. But I wish I could have hit it on the head during that moment, because I literally had no one, right? Outside of the scarce family and friends, I only remember one, right? I didn't really have anybody, so I think I really should have hit that aim on that. But what I ended up doing instead was, and this is actually a true story, is I think in that moment I realized that I really didn't want to die. I just didn't want to, feel that pain anymore. Obviously, I realized that death was not the way to go. Because I was so young, I didn't, really live life yet. Obviously, when that foundation is taken away from you, you kind of realize that how much you need it, right? How much you need people. When, in my case, when you want suicide so much, and that option is taken away from you, you kind of realize the value of life, right? And how badly I just wanted to be understood, and I just really needed people, right? And so that was my whole experience, right? A very lonely time. Go ahead. At the end of the day, I kind of realized the value of who I had in my corner.
That was very good to hear towards the end, the gaining of value of that. Could you go over quite literally like how your relationship with death changed over time, and how your journey has not only created him as a construct, but how now that you know he exists and you fully embrace the fact that he exists, how does it affect you and your daily emotions?
Yeah, well, one thing I will say is that the side is still spinning, right? It never stops spinning until the day I actually go into the ground. It never stops spinning, right? Like I said before, it lingers in the back of my mind some days. It takes over the majority of my thoughts some days. And then as a writer, right, he's a character that I can write adventures for. Dark humorous adventures, right? And so I often think about death a lot. And I think it kind of manifests as, who will be at my funeral, right? How I will die, right? Will I be scared when I die, right? Kind of manifests that way. And I think with my relationship with death, certainly I'm not afraid of it, right? If you were to take anything from Death and I, or this conversation on this podcast today, I'm not afraid to die, right? It's not saying I want to die like right now, but if my moment comes, it comes, right? I'm not afraid of I'm not afraid of going out, right? And if I died tomorrow, I think I'd be happy, because quite literally I have everything I ever wanted. Everything else is kind of but if my story were to end tomorrow, I think the main thing would be complete. Hey, he got his kidney and he got to live his life to the end of his days, right? So if anything, I'm not afraid of death. If death actually is a person, I'd love to meet him one day. I'm not afraid of death. I still think about it, but I don't let it dominate my life.
So something that you mentioned quite a bit is that you are not afraid of death, which is definitely something that 99% of the universe would say, or actually a lot less, surprisingly.
I don't give a lot less.
But for me, at least, I have the mentality, or the dumbass mentality, that I'm mortal until proven guilty or proven otherwise.
Yes.
But what I would say is that it's not the fear of death. What I believe is the fear of true death.
Yeah.
The fact that I think it's brought up in other cultures, where it's like you don't die truthfully until everyone forgets who you are.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my fear, because
That you'll be forgotten.
not even just that,
Yeah.
but that I didn't help the people that needed it. Like, I know with this podcast that even if these conversations in this moment that I'm in right now, like, doesn't get like spoken about, like, at least for right now, I know these videos are always gonna be there for people to like listen to and have these conversations, ask these questions and stuff like that. And it's a little sad sometimes, now that I think about it, that like there's a lot of people who straight up fear death, when in all actuality, you shouldn't.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you shouldn't fear death, my apologies. Terrible wording. Don't be my ass for it. But what you should be afraid of is more of a thing of, did you do enough in your life? Like, don't get me wrong, that's definitely a question that everyone asks themselves.
Yeah.
But like, did you do enough in your life that you could say that yes, at the end of your days, I did everything that I wanted?
Yeah.
Like, I've come to terms with, I think I mentioned in the last episode that I live a life where it's like I try almost everything because I don't want to live a life of regret. I don't want to die a day of regret. The day I die should be a day where it's either like sad, truly, but it should be a fact that he lived his life.
Well, yeah, and obviously death comes first off, but I would say that I think the only people who should really fear death is those who haven't really left a legacy, right? And I think I'm fortunate enough to have left one, even though I'm very young, right? These stories will always be out there, right? So that's why I'm saying if I die tomorrow, right? I think I'd be okay because you would have death and I, you would have the good soldier, you would have publisher the hard working. But I think the sad thing is that you wouldn't really have anything else, right? And I think I hit on this in the beginning. I think what I'm afraid of is not the death of like my being, but like the death of my ideas, right? And the fact that could be lived with, right? I'd hate to grow older and lose my ability to tell good stories because it's that imaginative spark that I cover so much, that I covet so much, and that I try to nurture so much, right? So that's why I try to not do everything, but that's why every story I write, a good amount of care goes into it, right? Non-fiction and fiction alike. And I feel like, that saying that a good person doesn't worry about being good, they kind of just do, right? I think that's, I think that's what, that's what the relationship with people in death is like. People shouldn't worry about, dying, right? They should just live, right? I wouldn't worry about, who's gonna be this, I wouldn't worry about, what man you're gonna die. I wouldn't even worry about when you're gonna die. I would just live life, right? Every day, right? And, and I think that's why living is so important, and doing something with your life is so important, because you don't know when that day's gonna come, right? So, I'd say that every day, try to get up and do something meaningful, right? If you don't do it today, do it tomorrow, right? If not tomorrow, then do it the next day. But as long as I live, at least on Earth, I'll try to do something productive, do something meaningful. but at the same time, chill out, right? Because you don't want to get burned out doing stuff. That's the quickest way to get burning yourself out. But yeah, just take one day at a time. One day at a time, and live your life.
Yeah. Before we move on to the next section, I wanted to ask you two more questions. One is, like, how do you see your relationship between faith, fear, and your experiences with death and illness? It's a lot, I know. A lot
Yeah, death and illness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Depends on the illness, right? Some bring you closer to death than others, right? Cancer brings you closer to death than dialysis does. Not that dialysis didn't sneeze that, let's be real. People have a chance of starting dialysis, right? Cancer is a different story. So I think when it comes to illness, it's just, how fast you're going to be at death's door, right? And I think for those terminal illnesses, right, I think that's where my previous point comes into play, right? If you don't have time, to live long, live right now, right? Cherish every second of life, right? Hug your family, hug your loved ones, right? And just spend time with them. Covet your time with people, because cancer's a bitch, right? My grandfather had it, my grandmother had it, my uncle had it, and we try to spend every day with those people. As far as faith goes, I believe in the afterlife, right? I believe that if you believe that Jesus is the Son of God, Savior of the world, then death is the least of your worries, right? You will get to live in paradise, right? I think that's the other reason why I'm unafraid of death, because I'm confident in the fact that I will see heaven one day. I look forward to that day, right? But if there isn't one, well, at least who can blame me for believing in something better beyond this life? I don't think it's. Well, obviously, I pray that God will give me a good day, good life, and obviously, I pray that I'll see tomorrow. But I don't know how God thinks, right? Yeah, faith is something that a very small few understand, right? Especially this generation. I don't think a lot of people have that kind of dedication to faith. I think I would like to believe I do, right? But even I question and mess up sometimes, right? But I think that I believe in what I do because I believe that this world is just too evil for the good people to see nothing at the end of time, right? And so yeah, that's my take on that. I believe that there has to be something, because in this life, good people suffer way too much just for them to get nothing at the end of the time. So
I can understand that, most definitely. I definitely look at life as one of those things where it's like we kind of suffer, and I hope that at the end of life there'll be a better thing.
Oh yeah, same.
Or into the great beyond or something like that. But if it isn't, I'd have to just live with it, I guess. Well, die with it.
I mean, at least you tried, right? At least at least you believe in something better. Who can fault you for that?
I can understand that. Finally, what advice would you give to someone who is struggling with their mental health while facing challenging health conditions or uncertainties about their future? Not only just with you as yourself, but their peers, their family, colleagues, all that.
Well, number one, first and foremost, go to therapy, right?
Therapy. Therapy. Real therapy.
Yeah.
Not just talking to your friends.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
Yeah, no, therapy is so important, and I think that's what got me through most of, my kidney, way for a kidney. I found a therapist in the midst of that. I've been going ever since, right? And, yeah, no, therapy is so important. Can't get it enough. And,
Why are you yawning?
I'm tired, man. I'm tired.
I know we just worked out yesterday, but it wasn't even that bad.
But I'm still tired though. Anyway, yeah, therapy is important, but also just it's important to like never lose sight of what you like to do, right? Because that's what depression is. Depression, or one of the symptoms of depression, is losing interest in the things you like to do. And sometimes that happens, right? Sometimes that happens. It happens to me more often than not. But yeah, I think continue to do what you love to do. If it makes you feel good, I encourage whoever to keep doing what they love to do, right? Because although it's not therapy outright, it is therapeutic, right? Sometimes you want to have access to a therapist, right? So it's important to healthily self-medicate with something that gives you joy, gives you pleasure, that doesn't harm you, right? Because honestly, if I just left it at, do what gives you joy and pleasure, that, opens up to drugs. And I don't support that. I think that's a terrible way of coping. So I think, yeah, those are the main two that I would give advice. Just find a therapist, continue to do what you love to do, and just take it one day at a time, man. I mean, I know depression can give one tunnel vision. I know with depression that everything kind of slows down and you're not getting anywhere, but as long as you continue to live, right, and continue to just be present, right, I think you're winning in the end. So
You're winning, son.
yeah, keep living, keep enjoying life or trying to enjoy life. Do the things you enjoy to do, whether that's painting, drawing, writing, playing video games, taking walks, anything, right? That's productive and healthy and safe. And then find a therapist. So that's what I would say. Those two things.
Indeed. So before we go into the next topic, I think you might know this song. It's a song by Roddy Ricch.
Yeah.
I forgot what it was called. I'm gonna signature way afterwards. But it's where I kind of got the idea of the 6. The verse is, I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. And I was like, hold on. Like,
yeah, no.
That's bars.
Yeah, no. I know the song, Die Young by Roddy Ricch.
Indeed.
I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. Yeah.
I got a post bill.
Yeah.
My just gotta die.
Yeah, no. Great song, man.
Welcome back. So we had a quick intermission where we had to go do our separate things.
Own separate lives.
Our own lives. Doing a bit of work, you know what it is. But we are back and continuing on to his second piece, The Good Soldier. Like as you explained before, it's more of a religious piece that kind of resonated with you, not just in that aspect of like who you are as a person, but your connection to God and your connection to death and all that. Can you describe the emotions and thoughts you experienced during the ungodly hours of the night when you were awake listening to Juice WRLD and contemplating questions about love and your identity?
See, I told you that this question felt like an attack, but I'm attacking nonetheless. Okay, so I guess to start with that, I would say that Juice WRLD is one of my favorite artists, and I kind of relate to what he says in his songs, not by the literal means, but like the emotions he talks about and the emotions that he brings out in me when I listen. And I guess the whole thing, when I wrote that, I was just noting about the habit I have, because I do that a lot. Every so often, I can't go to sleep, stay up late, and I put in my headphones, turn over on my back, stare at the ceiling, and let the music play. And I thought I'd start with that, number one, because it's a time of reflection, right? And I started with that because that's what this is. This is that piece of a reflection on everything I've been through, and by everything I mean the 8-year wait for the kidney, right? Like I said, this piece is mainly talks about my feelings after waiting for a kidney, after the initial surgery getting the kidney, and just normal life, right? What normal life looks like for me now. And as far as identity, obviously, I'm a different person now, right? I'm no longer the same guy that would go to dialysis Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Like, 3 years ago today, I'd be on dialysis right now.
Congrats on your freedom.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate that very much. And yes, obviously, I'm a different person. And, that opening kind of reflects that, I guess, because before, where I would go to sleep with machines, now I wake up and go to sleep in silence. And so, yeah.
So, regarding that, like, this isn't even a question that was written out. This is more of a question for mainly me. Do you think it's just Juice WRLD, or is it other types of artists, bands?
It depends, Usually, Juice WRLD kind of hits the great end for me. But sometimes it's Rex Orange and Television. Sometimes it's, I don't know. There are other songs on there. I probably there are other songs that I listen to. But Juice just hits different. Yeah.
Big Juice WRLD guy.
Not the biggest, but hey, he up there. What?
See, now I'm not the one who made fun of his height.
Yes, you did.
He's doing it to himself.
Up there is double entendre because he lives up in heaven. Yes, he is. He is probably. He is. But yeah. Double entendre.
Double entendre.
Yeah.
So how'd your belief in God's soldiers and God's army change over time, especially with your illness? Did you feel as though you were worthy to be a part of this army?
Sometimes. Sometimes I felt like the strongest person alive, I felt invincible. And I really did feel like God's perfect soldier. And when I was younger, those kinds of feelings intensified because, I always wondered about heaven, right? Since that's where I was taught that all, of God's people go when they die. I just wanted to see it for myself. And this is not from a suicidal standpoint. This is just the childlike wonder of something possibly fantastical. So yeah, I thought that idea was pretty awesome. But as I got older, right, I didn't really want to fight in heaven. I just kind of wanted to rest, right? So I don't know what role I'll play when I get to heaven, but I hope there's rest because this life is hard enough as it is, and fighting in heaven it'd be nice, but it'd be kind of like a repeat of life. So yeah.
Do you believe that it's when you do eventually go to heaven and stuff like that? Do you believe that you've earned rest? Because that is something that not many people really talk about sometimes.
I sure hope so. I've been through enough as it is. right? So if I haven't earned the rest, like going through this life, I wonder, you know. But that's the thing, right? I don't think heaven is a matter of earning, right? Because the good book says, believe in your heart and confess with your mouth that you believe that Jesus Christ is Lord and Savior, right? So I've done that, right? So as far as earning goes, I already have it, right? It's just, it's just a matter of me just continuing to live the believer's life, right? And just going through it. And I think I'd like to believe that I'd be rewarded at the end of the tunnel for, just living this life to the fullest. And so, yeah, I don't think it's a matter of earning, but being rewarded for, sticking with it for so long.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned in your text that you had struggled with anxieties, fears, and the idea that you might have to return to dialysis. How do you cope with that type of anxiety, and one of the things that drives you every day to keep going, to try to not think about this other thing?
Well, that's a tough one because I still think about that, right? That anxiety is not fully behind me. But yeah, I'm still facing it each and every day. And I think what triggers it is when I have to go into the hospital for an emergency. Like last week, I had a UTI, and UTIs can mean a number of things. It can mean kidney failure, it can mean dehydration, it can mean a number of things. But my mind immediately goes to that point, right, of kidney failure. And when the kidney fails, it's back on dialysis, right? So how I cope with it, I try to keep my thoughts focused on the present instead of letting them spiral. I try to think about what information has actually been told to me versus what I believe or what I think is going to happen. So yeah, it's really just staying in the present. And yeah, but it's not easy, because those kinds of thoughts can be overwhelming. Sometimes my whole mindset changes when I go through that anxiety period. Because, it's a lot, right? Dialysis is a lot, right? And for me to return to that, I feel like it would be a slap in the face, right? And it'd feel like, I've struggled for 8 years for nothing just to return. And I think I think, if anything, that is my test of faith, right? Even though facing the potential ability to go back to dialysis at any point, right? Is to still believe that, God's in my corner and that God's got me. As far as how I cope with that, other than the thoughts on the present, I pray about it. I pray, Lord, please don't let this be the case. I've got a whole life to live, right? I've got things I want to explore. And, it really feels like every time that happens to me, every time I have to go into the hospital for whether it be a UTI or potential infection, I always tell God, I plead with God and say, my life is just beginning. Please don't take this away from me again. And it's been working out so far. So I'm gonna keep doing that. But also, it's just doing what I need to do. Living with the kidney, it's not just doing whatever you want. You gotta be healthy. You gotta drink enough water every day. I drink about 2 liters a day, or try to, and I try to eat 3 meals a day. Some days are better than others, but hey, I believe that I'm doing a good job so far. So yeah,
I can understand that. Another thing you mentioned in your piece was that you had met a nurse, and one of the things that she discussed is quite literally He.
Yeah.
My
Guys,
fault. My
guys,
fault. My
guys
fault,
can be
guy
nurses too.
My fault, guy nurses. Don't be my ass.
Yeah. Don't you work for a hospital? Aren't you a guy nurse right now?
I'm not a guy nurse.
Okay.
I work in a hospital.
Does that make you a nurse?
No.
No, because you don't have a medical degree. That's right. That's right. Okay.
I could go into like what I do with a hospital a little bit later or another day.
Mm-hmm.
But something they mentioned was that are you willing to fight for your own peace?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that kind of like drew, like at least created a question in my mind was not the fact of are you willing to fight for your own peace? Do you consider your life, especially now, like to be your fight? Like are you still fighting for your peace?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's always a fight, you know. Some days are more fierce than others, but yeah, no, I still believe that I'm fighting for peace. I think I'm fighting for my peace every day. Every moment that I get to myself, I get a portion of that peace, right? And every time I have to go into the hospital, I think, you know, that's my peace is at risk, right? So I think, yeah, I'm always fighting. Like I said, I deal with anxiety, I gotta fight that. I deal with worry and uncertainty and doubt, I gotta fight that, right? I gotta fight negative thoughts every day. Not just pertaining to going back to dialysis, but just like rolling anxiety about life, right? And I think that's fighting for my peace. Now, what is that peace? I think if I could answer that to the best of my ability, it would be, you know, just the firm belief that I will always be safe with this kidney, right? That this kidney isn't going anywhere, that it's mine forever, however long I live, and that just to rest in that certainty, right? And I think that's the problem because it's uncertain. Not because I'm a danger, but just because anything can happen at any time. So, is it realistic for me to fight for that sort of peace? I don't think so. You know, I think there is a day where my kidney will always be good, and yes, there will be hiccups, but I gotta understand that, you know, just because there are hiccups or potential bumps in the road doesn't mean my kidney's gone forever, right? There are many steps between initial rejection and dialysis, right? And the doctors that work with me are willing to do whatever they can to make sure I don't get to dialysis. Dialysis is the desperate step. I think the ultimate goal is the preservation of life. But yeah, there are many steps between dialysis or initial rejection and kidney and dialysis. Fortunately for me, I've only had step 2 and 3, which is antibiotics. So yeah, fighting for my peace. And really, fighting for my peace is just enjoying the little peaceful moments I have. So reading books outside, watching the sunset, enjoying video games, writing. I was in that is my peace.